Welcome back to another episode of In Swine Versation, the Pig Farmer Says with Leon Sheets. Welcome to the program, Leon.
Welcome. Glad to be here.
So you're a pig farmer in Ionia, Iowa, raising approximately 33,000 pigs. How did you get started in the pig business, Leon?
It's like a lot of them in the pig business. I grew up on a family farm that diversified, that had milk cows, and mom had the chickens and we had the pigs. And as got older, the pigs got to be the love. And as I shuffled on through, I started early after college, got into the pig business and kind of migrated from working for a genetic company to managing a large farm, and then acquired ownership of the farm and just kept going from that. And that's been about 45 years ago that I've been on this location taking care of pigs.
How has things changed over the last 35 years?
Oh, golly. Is my original start, if we started in small pens and barns and we went to open lots, as progressive, that we got the introduction of the inside production systems, that some use the word confinement, but we moved the pigs inside and made the adjustments to individual housing for the pigs, that the diets have changed, is that the materials have changed, what we've learned about the ventilation, the constructions of building, the material, how we want to handle pigs, the genetics of the pigs that we're using. So you could say there's been a plethora of changes over the years. And I suspect there's more still coming on. You don't sit less, that we're not at the end of the changes coming. We'll keep moving forward and adjusting and making a better pig, a product for our consumers to enjoy more, and how we take care of the animals and how we take care of the people that take care of the animals.
So from looking back over the last several years, what has set you up for sustainability? And then how do we continue to sustain that success in the future?
It's some of those that grab the definition of sustainability that you want and bring it out. There's a couple different versions, but it was some of the practices that we've learned from our dads and our granddads. You take care of the land, you take care of the water. So is the practices that we do farming, that we don't lose the soil, we make certain of it. We take the nutrients from the animals we raise, we put it back on the ground in a proper way. We incorporate it to save as much of it. When we have creeks and rivers through our farms, we protect those with buffer strips. If we have waterways, we get those grassed in so the water's not taking any nutrients. Is where we need to put protection with windbreaks, we put those in. Cover crops are coming in now, is that to try to have something growing on the land, sustainable year round. So what we grow, we put back in the feed, as the corn and beans go back into the diets of the animals we feed. So we've kind of got the full circle. We're looking at the things that we do use on the outside, whether it be fossil fuels or electricity. We use the latest technology we can to conserve of those things that we do need to keep temperatures, heat the animals, that we need lighting in certain cases. So anything we can to use the least amount of those and do it correctly. We've been doing that for a long time. And now probably the biggest change, we just started measuring what we're doing. That seems to be, we'll prove it. So now we got to go back and do some new metrics and calculate what we have been doing. And when we do that, all of a sudden, farming industry hasn't been such a bad character in the scheme of things.
So when you talk about measuring what you're doing, how is that different than measuring in the past? Or did you not measure things? Like, what is your definition of measuring?
We didn't measure it in the past. We would just do the things that we thought was right. And now, if you say society or there's some criteria that we need to go back off and prove what we're doing, then we need to come up with the tools that exactly what do you want to measure. If we have to go back out and measure a factor, calculate a soil loss, if we're taking a look and calculating how much of nitrogen, of the fertilizers, nitrogen and phosphorus that we put on the ground, that some of those that they may leach or lose out, that we need to measure the water quality leaving. So how much did leave our farm or didn't leave our farm. and put a value of that and come up with a sustainable number for our farm operation. That there's some, if I say on the consumer side, that companies are wanting the new metrics to prove their sustainability, because they're being asked that, well, the people that supply you with products, how do you know that they're being sustainable? And so they're coming back and asking their suppliers, and whether I'm supplying protein as meat or corn or soybeans, they're asking me, I need a number from you so that I can prove to my consumers what those numbers are, that we're doing the right thing, we're buying our products from the correct people.
So I follow you on Facebook, and you have a lot of posts, and it all starts with the pig farmer says. So you're interactive now on social media, but it wasn't always that way.
In 2018 is I was nominated and selected as Pig Farmer of the Year. The National Pork Board had a program, and a lot of I'm going to say our staff members encouraged me, because I hadn't been, not opposed to social media, I just hadn't been, is that share what you do on the farm, Leon. It was under the We Care topics. And so one day in the office, I kind of threw my phone over to one of the staff people, and I said, all right, well, put me on this thing, sign me up, and let's see what happens. And there was a little bit that some had would apologize for being a pig farmer. And that's how I got to using that, is that I'm not ashamed. I'm proud of that I'm a pig, raised pigs. And so I just kind of, something started off as a handle that's kind of stuck and is recognizable. And the pig farmer says, and then I started on what I'm going to talk about. Or it developed a little bit, is that I've been called a storyteller. What I talk about, what we do on the farm every day, you put it into a story, because a lot of them that view in are non-farmers. And so you have to be careful with the terminology, that we have language that we understand in the barn, but our consumers don't understand some of those terms. So you need to back up and explain what a weaner pig is, or what a feeder pig is, or mark it, and kind of remember to bring them along so that they understand what you're talking about. And it kind of just snowballed from there, is that as I started writing, it got more comfortable and more people started following, and we were doing the teachings of just what I do on the farm every day. Not so much that this is the right way. I'm just explaining to our consumers, this is how I do it, trying to build a confidence that the reason the We Care program was started, that a lot of people were hearing stories that we weren't doing the right things by our animals or by the land. And you may at the same time, is that if there's an issue develops, is that the consumers hear it on TV. And if you ask them, what do you know about the pig business? You'll hear the last issue that came on TV. Well, then we're writing editorials and trying to get back. No, that's not correct. What happens? The folks that want to be the naysayers or have misinformation, is I will visit with them, but I'm not going to take them into an argument, because if you understand that 5 to 10% of the consumers have formed an opinion already, and probably of the negative, that they're not going to switch, or we're not doing it right. There's, say, 20% of the folks that are convinced that we're doing it right, and I don't need to try to convince or change them. They can follow along what I'm doing. That 5 or 10%, I'm going to tell my story, but I'm not going to invest a lot of time trying to change their mind, because we're not going to do it. What I'm gearing for is that middle 70%, and you can pick the numbers. But folks that don't know or want to know, the conversation you hear is that, well, I want to know where or how my food is growing, and who better to tell the story coming from me. I'm in the barn every day, and hopefully hearing it from a farmer that's out there. And if I open up the barn through the pictures I show, they can see what's actually going on in the barn. And, well, that's not what I was being told. Now, I can't reach everybody, but I can do my part, because when an issue hits the TV, I can't write eloquent enough editorials or change minds. The damage is done. And you don't win very many games trying to score points on defense. You need to be on the offense. So if we can work at a time ahead, doing the things that assure our consumers, our customers, we're doing the right things, and getting pork from my farm or from our industry is a good deal and a good thing, because we're doing it right and doing it quietly. And a little bit to develop that trust is you'll see me share a little bit. I open up myself, and when you're chatting with consumers, that when they find out you're a dad and a granddad, now you've got a little common ground you talk about, and you do the different things with the kids. I'm close to woods and a river, and I like the wildlife, so that correlates that if I'm taking care and concerned about the wildlife, you don't think that I'm concerned about the animals that are under my day-to-day care, that I have actual control. So I hope that they've developed a comfort level, and then when they hear some news that's different than what I might be saying, that they feel comfortable enough to send me a note and said, I heard this said, or I saw this. Is that really true? Versus all of a sudden it's on the news or on the TV, and I can't get it fixed there. I got to do the background first. And that's my comfort level, is chatting and telling our story. You'll hear our commodity groups, the producers have to get out and tell their story, let the consumers know what they are, because not very many people know a farmer anymore. They remember how granddad did it, or maybe their dad or their great granddad, but that's not the way we conduct ourselves in agriculture. Those big red hip roof barns are gone, that they've kind of got old and wore out, and they've served their purpose, and the farmsteads look a little different.
So you're filling a void to communicate how food is prepared. What is your version of storytelling? So you're, like you said, you care about the animals, you're showing people how it's done, but is there a Leon Sheets version of storytelling?
I think you probably hit the key point, is that that's my style. Um, I was coined when I first started doing it. A gentleman, David Skaggs in South Dakota, said, Leon, you're quite a storyteller. And it's just kind of stuck that I've developed a style that fits me. And every producer, if they would want to get out and chat about it, has a style of what they do and how they do it. I've just developed how Leon does it. I don't know if it's right or wrong. That's one of the things that, if you went to journalism school, or you go to the work with the folks that get out and do those things, there's not a class specifically to how Leon does his style. It's just me. It's part of my personality come through, and sometimes you can question my personality, but it can be funny, it can be serious. But you let the folks know that it's my personal, and they start to understand, and maybe you've been following long enough that you probably understand or know a whole lot more about me, because I let those both sides come through. I can work in the barn with the animals, I can go to nature, but at the same token, I'm not afraid to turn around. I can step in the kitchen and pull out and shake and rattle those pots and pans, and guys can step to the grill, but I can go and pull out the oven and get it warmed up and make some creations. And when we're out in the public chatting with consumers, it's an extra bonus that they said, well, I don't know how to prepare pork, because the earlier comment that we've got generations away, that when grandma was making it, mom learned how to make some things in the kitchen. Well, some of those ladies went to town and worked, and so their daughters didn't learn how to cook, and their daughters didn't learn how to cook, is that they know the number for the pizza place. And all of a sudden we've got a generation of folks that are wanting to come back and do some of those things, that prepare their own food. And well, I don't know how to prepare pork. And there's some really simple ideas that, okay, they know how to make chops, and pretty much everybody's got figured out how to make bacon. But all of a sudden, how to use some of the other cuts and make a variety of things, instead of having the same old every night. That get creative. I'll turn around, and your mom said don't play with your food. I'll tell you to play with your food. Some of those things, creations, really come up to be nice enhancements of a meal. So, and not being afraid to go up and share that, because at times I make a little enhancement to one of my recipes, and people go, yeah, black. But I kind of like it. There's other things, and that's each individual has a way of what they like to eat and how to eat it. And I'll just encourage you to go try it.
So this is your passion. You're not a paid blogger. Currently, has your mission been successful, Leon?
You're correct. I am not a paid blogger. This is just me talking about my industry. And I'm going to use the word accused and said that I am pretty passionate about what I do, that when I'm on stage, apparently my passion shows through in my presentations pretty hard. I do this for the industry, that if we can get consumers back on pork, enjoy pork, and doing some creation. And if they're out, that you normally think when you're going out for a meal, well, you have steak. Nah, challenge the restaurant to go ahead and put pork on the menu and see the different things in there. So this is just something I do. I almost say in the last couple 3 years, it might be almost a stress reliever for me, that I don't go out in the morning with an idea that, well, this is what I want to write about today. There's things in the barn that just pop up that's kind of neat. That would look at some of the pictures that I show. You can't create those things. You got to be there at the moment, pull that camera out and be ready to fire, because it's spur of the moment. It's not going to happen again. You can sit there all day. And so sometimes they're maybe not as good as you like, but I try to show actual real life at the moment it happened. And when you get an idea, you see a couple, 3 pictures, kind of a story forms back in there, that it can be entertaining. It can have a meaning behind it of what I do. And if folks get a chance to see what's actually happening on the farms.
And like you said, the story always changes and evolves, and you're just there to present in your world and showcase the great care you have for animals and your journey along the way.
It's what I say. It's what happens on my farm, is that other farms do it different. But this is what's happening on my farm. I can't speak for the other farmers, but they're pretty passionate about what they do, and perhaps what we'd like to do. Your job as you educate and inform the public is an encouragement on my part, is that there's other producers could be stepping up, that I wasn't the first one to jump up and go and share the story, but I don't have to be the only one. And people would like to hear other folks what they do on their farms or cared. And there's some folks that once you get over that nervousness is the first thing, because the public is pretty understanding. If you get concerned that, well, there's going to be some of the naysayers, the negative ones are going to be jumping over you. I haven't found that to be true. I just talk about what I know, that there's some folks in the ag industry that love to take on that 5 or 10%. Gosh bless them and let them go to it. Me, I'm just going to sit in that middle 70 and try to answer your questions. I'll talk about what I do and start the conversation, is that you learn from some of the training that you receive from the commodity groups dealing with the public, which questions, how to find out what's really concerning them, and then go from that point. But once they feel comfortable chatting with me, like I was their dad or their granddad, and I'm not the big bad guy, that I'm like them. I'm in town. I'm working. You'll see at times that you kind of hate to do it, but I have to remind producers, have to remind the community that we're part of the community. That they say, well, you're the big producer, you're the big pig farmers. All you want to do is build big and stink up the ground. No, I'm one of the guys sitting in your pew on Sunday morning. I'm the one that's being a 4-H leader. When you see the pancake supper uptown put on by the emergency service, who donated to pork for that breakfast? And there's things you'd like to do, just remain anonymous, but we found that sometimes we've got to remind folks that we do participate, that we do care, and that we're involved, that they didn't realize or think about it, that we are part of our local communities, and we're just trying to expand that to a bigger scope, that I'm in my little world here in Northeast Iowa, and hopefully we can touch the bigger parts of the community with our message that if I'd said, hey, pork is good for you, and we raise it correctly and we care about it, that go ahead and enjoy a healthy, nutritious meal, and you'll be happy.
So when you hear the word hot topics in the pork industry, is there anything that comes to mind, something you're passionate about or has affected you?
You know, over the years, if you looked at certain things that have come through, you go back to the late 60s and 70s, is that all of a sudden it was nitrites in the bacon. Bacon is bad for you. And all of a sudden at that time, the country started getting healthy. Your doctor told you to quit eating bacon, to quit smoking, and to start exercising. And as we progress forward, we started learning more skills, and bacon took a hit that it was the cheapest thing in the market. Well, by the time we got into the late 80s, 90s, is that all of a sudden the food service learned that if you took a couple pieces of that really cheap bacon, slapped it on a sandwich, most mediocre sandwiches became pretty edible or pretty decent to eat. And now all of a sudden, when you chat about pork, bacon comes to mind. And bacon is the highest priced cut of the pig that we've got. Everybody wants to put bacon, and it gets shortage. And all of a sudden, what you used to think as traditional as the ham or the loin, that's a little tougher to move. Than they understood that, pulled pork is pretty good. I can make recipes pretty cheap with pulled pork. So then along the line, it came back is that our sow housing was a problem for some. And then all of a sudden it got the buzzword antibiotics. Got to be the bad talk, is that we're filling our pigs full of antibiotics and drugs, and we can grow pigs so much better. When you have the conversation, is that it's like what you have to take when you're sick. They're not cheap, and we don't put anything in a pig just because we think it'll do better. There's pros and cons, and all of a sudden we've dealt with that issue, and we had to explain folks that it's illegal to put those products in. So AR housing, and you mentioned, you'll probably allude, is that Prop 12 is one that's kind of causing some consternation and concern. It's one being dictated by another state on how we produce on the farm. As we work forward, the work being done is that the key thing is not to stop Prop 12. A part of that for California is kind of through, but it's a matter so it doesn't take all the way through. But the consumers are now understanding that maybe part of what they were being told when they voted wasn't quite correct. The other one is that back in 2017-18, is that there was quite a push on some of our major retailers is to only buy source pigs from certain sow housing. And once they got into that discussion, all of a sudden a lot of the retailers decided, oh, we bit into that thing too quick. That is not correct. And so it's a matter of part of what I've been quietly doing is trying to educate the consumer, because like I already said, I can't score many points playing defense. And once it's out on TV, it's hard to stop that notion. It's on people's minds for a while. And if you ask them, what do they know about pigs? That's the last thing they saw on TV is what they'll turn around and probably repeat back to you. What we may be thinking on Prop 12 is that California's 11-12% of the consumption. Does that mean we have to have 100% of U.S. pork production California compliant? Well, not at the moment, unless all the other states and our exports buy in. If we take a look right now, if you had extra pigs available, Prop 12 compliant, could you get a harvest partner to take those pigs today or next week? In the near term, no. They've got all the pigs they need. Not every harvest partner is going to have every plant go through the paperwork and compliance. So that'll be a long progression strolled out. So there's a niche market, and that walks in is that to be Prop 12 compliant, pig farmers have for years that if a consumer wants a specific type of problem, that if it's organically raised, if it's hormone free or antibiotic free, which understand the definitions of those two terms back in there because they're kind of irrelevant. But if they want their pigs raised in outside production or their chickens raised outside production, there are producers who do that, and they can secure that through the local market. It doesn't have to be dictated. So what is important for the consumer, that if they're choosing, there is availability of those products without mandating to have those things come through.
So you once traveled to Hutterite colonies in Canada. Can you talk about the trip, the experience, and what you learned, Leon?
The travels over the course, I'm going to say my career, but time for different reasons, I've been able to travel overseas. When pig farmers from, I don't care which country you are, is when we get together, we understand one another. It may have to go through an interpreter, but pig farmers can talk pigs and we get along fine. The pigs are the same. The problems are the same, is that the feed costs too much and the harvest partners don't pay enough and we can't save enough pigs. And whichever country you're in, it's really kind of the same thing, and it's enjoyable to go back and listen to it from a different perspective. Is that in the U.S. it's a corn soy. I get north of the border now. I got to understand talking about wheat and barley, and you guys like to do things in the metric system, so I got to hurry up and do my calculations to get from pounds and tons when we're talking about different performance factors. I got to make those quick calculations, but it's enjoyable to be up with the folks. And some of that when you get clear up, I'm going to say way out in the Tules, when you're north of Saskatoon a ways, it flattens out and it's beautiful country up in there. Is that just you get a group of the colonies and everybody in that sections that are in the with the hog boss and all the folks that are under him, and have a sit down in a room and have a conversation with them. That's enjoyable. So getting out and traveling, and I don't mind going north on your side where you're at, Jim, and chatting with the folks out there. It's enjoyable.
What prompted that trip?
That was back quite a few years ago. Was with a genetic company, and he took me around to some different farms that was using the genetics.
Okay, so north of Saskatoon, so that's getting way up north. And what did you learn most on that trip?
Um, it's the same of what the pigs I was looking at, but the production is the same except for what the feed ingredients. I had an opportunity to travel up. We were at Regina for a trade show, and we went to a farm, and they were having their 12-foot lines that were 12 foot deep was freezing up in the wintertime, draining from the barns of their manure storage. I was close as I've come to permafrost for my first time back in here. That, normally 7-8 feet, you don't freeze stuff up there. They're down 10-12 feet and they're freezing sewer lines. So just the challenges they have and different things that they deal with, more I'm going to call barren ground, that the frost goes deeper. So whatever the situation, wherever we're at, it's just wide open. You don't go up with the percept, I want to see this. You just open mind and what rolls back in, and somebody else may have taken away something different, but just the conversation to go out on the farms and see how the surroundings, what they have to deal with for definitions that, man, you get up in part of those areas. We talk about biosecurity. You don't see a yard light as far as you can see. Around my place, I can count 43 yard lights out at night when I look around my barn.
So the pig farmer says is one of the statements, but there's another one. I'm a pig farmer. What do I know? Where does this statement come from, and how did it result in your t-shirt?
It was when I was in state leadership. We were on a flying trip to DC, and we were visiting with one of our representatives, and it probably wasn't going the best, and it was with the aide, but somewhere, whether it was, what do I know? I'm just a pig farmer. I'm just a pig farmer. What do I know? But I rolled that statement out that I was being a little sarcastic and a little perturbed about his attitude. And the guy with me came back, just thought it was the funniest thing he heard. And one of our communication people in Iowa Pork thought that was kind of a put down. But if you kind of take the other verse at that, we talk about in agriculture, I'm just a farmer. Well, yeah, I'm just a farmer, but I know about seed. I know about chemicals. I got to know about fertilizer. I got to know about finances. I got to know about ground. So correlate that in the pigs. I got to know about the genetics. I got to know about nutrition. I also need to know about anatomy and physiology, that if I've got a sick pig or if I've got a mortality, I need to be opening up and help the vet to take a look to see if we can't find out what's wrong. I need to understand ventilation. I need to understand transport on the market. So, what do I know? What do you want to talk about on that? That there's quite a bit in agriculture that an individual of a farmer, and it can be a farmer in general, it can be a beef farmer, or it can be a poultry farmer, a pig farmer. There's quite a bit that we got to know. It's just not that we sit on an assembly line and put nuts on bolts all day long. There's quite a bit of that we have to have variation to do our job.
Well, you're an entrepreneur, so I think that kind of sums it up. Is the pig farmer, you feed the world, feed the people, and there's a lot that goes into each industry. And if we take the time to learn, then people would know, consumers would know actually how much you do know. So your t-shirt, you didn't wear that today. What was the story behind the t-shirt?
It's one, it actually kind of almost walks out that what I do is it's almost, I am like the teacher. A lot of folks don't know, so you've got to have the style is that um, if you're going to be working with your students or with the crowd, you've got to develop the style for that crowd. And quite a few years ago, I was commented to me by a couple of folks at Leon, you should have been a teacher, because I was working with youth. And he said, well, kids really respond to you. We can't get them to do that. You should have been a teacher. Um, but it's one that I've also been called a digital creator. And I had to go look up what a digital creator was back in there. It's kind of like a storyteller, except I type what I do and I share it, and maybe put some pictures with it. Otherwise, it's basically what I've been doing, just an updated fancy title is, but that's part of, maybe in that full thing of being a farmer is being a teacher, explaining what we do is that our consumers don't know. And so we got to teach them. They don't know. And so as you explain, that's when you explain, and that's what you're doing is teaching. So perhaps one of those categories we should have thrown in as a teacher is that if you have the skills and the capability and the opportunity you need to take to do it, to teach the younger generation, but the folks that you want to be your consumers, the consuming public, about your business, what you do and why you do it and how you do it, then you got to educate them, and education requires teachers. And I can do my little part, but if there was some more picking up the load and helping out a little bit, that it's easy to say, well, Leon's doing it, so we've got it done. The old story about somebody should have, but nobody did, and so it didn't get done. Is that, well, right now somebody's doing it, but I may slow down someday, or I may not be here. So we kind of need somebody to pick up the next generation of line and continue the legacy if we're having any good. And I think we're having good, because when I travel, I get around. And when you're on social media, you're not really certain who's listening or not. But when I started hearing my stories come back from people I never knew were listening to me, okay, I was having an impact.
So when we talk about legacy, what's your sustained legacy? What is the legacy you want to leave on the farm and in the industry?
You laid out an interesting discussion that I really haven't put a lot of thought, because if I'm going to have a legacy, a lot of that was already done years ago, by what I started at. I'm not automatically going to start today and say, hey, I want to leave a legacy. This is what I want. Now, that's been the impression that they have of me have been laid years ago, and it's been built up in there. And I'm not really sure, or I'm probably going to be humble enough to say that I'm not certain. I don't know what the folks would think or find the most. I think if you chat with several different people, they might have a little different version of what I've done. Is that you said that I teach and I educate. I'm out chatting in the public a little bit. That some might say he's a storyteller. Some might say, well, one thing you don't do is give Leon a microphone. Is we're going to be here a while if that happens. Um, but I'd like to think that I've been doing things the right way all the way along, and that I'll convince the folks to be doing that. And if you're going to be a love consumer of pork, and you know that it's going to be a delicious, nutritious experience every time that you step back in and have one, well, maybe I've done my little part in leaving something in the world. Now, a quick thought says that I've got a couple of kids, a daughter and a son that are in their 40s, and I've got 4 grandkids they're pretty special and spectacular too back in there. Perhaps that'll be the legacy that I leave by the things that they do. So you'd like to think you're remembered, but years from now, I could just be, if I get a marker on top of where I'm put down, that just might be good enough.
Well, Leon Sheets, thanks for joining us today.
It's been my pleasure. So go get your pork chop your pork meal for the day back there and enjoy. Thank you.